like this. I remember standing on a stage with a bunch of people around me and people above me. I was 7 years old, and I'll never forget that feeling I got looking at all the people. And I knew in that moment that I belonged on that stage. And I decided right then that this was what I was meant to do for the rest of my life. And I know at 7 years old, it's hard to think that you would really know what you want to do, but I did. And I fell in love with dance, and I fell in love with the stage. I was a little resistant at the time. I didn't love all the classes that I was taking, and I remember being on stage and doing my own moves instead of the choreography, kind of a little rebellious. But I do remember the curtain standing just like this, and the curtain, all the other dancers exited, and I just stood there. And the last image you have is the curtain closing. I'm still standing there. So anyway, when I was about 7, I fell in love with the world of dance. I remember one night I was in my room, and I grew up in Maine. I lived in a very small apartment in Maine, and I remember looking out the window, and there was a shooting star. And at that moment, I wished on that shooting star. I said, I wish that someday I can own a dance studio, and that someday I can dance forever. And I remember, and I watched the shooting star, and at the time, I didn't come from a wealthy family. I didn't come from lots of money. I came from a family that dealt with a lot of substance abuse, a lot of alcohol abuse. My days were very uncertain on a lot of time. That one dance class that I was taking was extremely hard to come by, and in fact, my parents, even that one class, that $25 a month, I'm old now, so it was way back in the day, got put together by a lot of other people. And so the circumstances for me to be able to get to where I am now do feel kind of extraordinary and do feel a little remarkable. So I'm happy to stand here today and to tell you a little bit about how that all came to be. I was not the most believed in dancer. I danced at a very small dance studio. I was often told I wasn't good enough or not the best, or I felt that a lot, but I knew in my heart that that's actually what I wanted to do. And I decided I would refuse to let anybody else tell me what I should do with my life and what brings me happiness. So I said, this is what I'm going to do. So regardless of what anyone ever said to me, I went back every day and I gave my best. After that, I pursued dance in college. I went off to college for dance. I started at a university in New Hampshire and was pursuing dance there, and I was getting a great dance education. And it was really important to me to be clear to get an education because nobody in my family had ever gone to a university. So again, I was sort of, shattering those glass ceilings, ladies. And I thought, I want to change the cycle. We all have the power to reverse the cycle in our lives. We don't have to be our past. We can only create our future. So I went off to college. Well, I auditioned for a show, Sesame Street Live. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that. It's a touring Broadway production of Sesame Street Live. I auditioned in college over Christmas break my sophomore year. I didn't hear back, so I assumed I didn't get the job. Well, come my junior year, I was back in school, and in September, I got a call that I booked this tour. And I was sort of faced with that pivotal moment in my life of, do I quit college right now? Do I pull out of a university? Or my education was so important to me, but at the same time, this dream of mine was right there. So I went to my college professor and I said, I don't know what to do. And I remember he looked at me and he said, Toni, you never know when an opportunity like this may come about again, but you can always go back to college. You can always get an education. That opportunity will always be there. And I said, you're right. So 2 weeks later, I was on a plane, off to production, left everything I knew, left everyone I knew, and I toured the country for over 2 years. I went everywhere in the U.S. you can imagine. I've been to every state in the U.S. except for Alaska. I went all Canada, Mexico, it was all over, and part of that was I actually ended up in California. We were touring California. We were playing at the Dolby Theater. It was super cool. I really fell in love with California. I had there was a roommate of mine on the tour who also lived here in California, and she had said, you should move here. There's so much opportunity for dance, because as you can imagine in New England, in a small town, there isn't a lot of opportunity for dance. So here we go. At the end of the 2 years, I packed my car. I put what I could in the back seat of my car. I had $500, and I drove myself to California to start this dream. And it was incredibly difficult, and I'm not going to stand here and tell anyone that this path was easy at all. There was no funding from my parents, you know. That's really important to remember. Like, that's not an excuse to not succeed at something because someone isn't helping you. You have to help yourself. And I knew that, and I knew anything that I was going to achieve was going to come from me helping myself, me seeking my own opportunities. So I worked really hard. I worked several jobs, from everything from Disneyland to Target to gyms to babysitting. And I was teaching dance because I've always been a dancer. I eventually came across a dance studio in Tarzana, and I started teaching there. I started teaching preschool dancers actually at the time, which I didn't really want to do because most dance teachers are like, want to teach older kids. But the opportunity was there. You can never turn something down if we feel like it's right and it takes us to the next level. So I started teaching. Shortly after that, I was teaching 29 preschool classes a month at this dance studio. With that said, it was the first community that I was a part of in a really, really long time. My friends that worked there, the other dance teachers were incredibly close. I became incredibly close with the students, with the parents, and I built a really strong community there. 7 years into that, I finally was beginning to get my life more stable, meaning I was able to finally eventually move from living on my friend's floor on a twin mattress for 4 years to getting a studio apartment. And I was thrilled. And when she told me she was selling the studio, I was really torn with, it wasn't, could I go find more dance teaching jobs? Because I knew that that was going to be a possibility. But it was, I didn't want to lose the connections that I had. I didn't want to lose the connections with my students, most of all, and how much love I had had for them. I'd had some of these kids for 8 years at this point, or 7 years. So I was like, I guess I need to buy this place. Well, let me tell you something. When you have a 490 credit score, which is, just so you guys know, is terrible. Yay. I had a 490 credit score and no money in the bank. Well, how are you going to buy a business? Everybody will tell you you can't. And in fact, the person I wanted to buy it from was, you can't, and you're not going to get on the lease, and you're, all these no's, right? Okay, I understand. Well, I didn't have a 490 credit score because I was irresponsible. I had a 490 credit score due to circumstances that were completely out of my means as a child, and also somebody who self-supported themselves through college with every loan. My parents were not on one single loan that I ever had for college. And aside from that, I bought my own car, I paid my own bills, and yes, I lived off credit cards for several years. It may sound scary, but I survived. You know, I was able to take care of myself, and all those things resulted into this not great situation. So I was like, how is this going to be possible at all? Well, I had been babysitting, and there was a family that kind of had heard my story, and one of the parents said, you know, we would be interested in lending you $10,000. I said, wow, $10,000. Well, if you're going to open a business, $10,000 isn't really a lot of money, but $10,000 is enough to open a bank account. So I opened it up, and then somebody had mentioned to me the Jewish Loan Foundation. I'm not Jewish. So I go down to the Jewish Loan Foundation, and I say, hey, can I apply for this loan? And they bring me in, and I'm like, but I'm not Jewish, but I promise I'll pay it back. And they heard my story. And so I got another $10,000 from the Jewish Loan Foundation, not being Jewish. Again, looking outside the box, looking at the opportunities. From there, I got somebody else lent me $5,000, and the light went on. I said, wow, I may not be able to get $100,000, but I may be able to get small amounts from different people and put it all together. Again, thinking outside the box. How am I going to get a lease, you say? Well, in my mind, I must own a studio on Ventura Boulevard. But I knew that that wasn't going to happen because it was too pricey. So I was like, we got to go down to Victory. We got to go off the boulevard. So I drove around with my friend, and I saw a big sign on a building that said leasing. I went into the building. It was an old TV studio. And I said, I want to lease this place. And they said, well, show me your stuff. So I'm like, oh, great, here's my 490 credit score. But I printed out everything I'd ever paid back to anybody. And I said, I promise you, I will pay this back. I'm going to make this happen. I showed up at the building every day for a week. Every day I went back down there. And the landlord and their family liked me. And so they said, yeah, we'll lease this to you. And that's how the Elite Dance and Performing Arts Center actually came to be. That was in 2012. So here I was, I had a studio, I had a room, I had 2 studios and 50 students. And that's how I opened the doors. And to be clear, at the time, you're not going to be able to run a business with $5,000 income a month. It's just simply impossible. So amongst that, there was more. I started to get more loans, more this, more that, more debt, whatever. You can't be scared of debt sometimes, because sometimes you have to take a risk in order to get back. So in 2012, I now have the Elite Dance Center, and since I've opened in 2012, we have 9 studios, one of which is an acrobatics room. We have aerial silts. We expanded into the second side of the building. I just opened up a 3rd building on the end of the block, which is a huge, huge space that we host master classes. I just started a nonprofit ballet company. We have an award-winning competition team with 100 members. We put on an annual Nutcracker. So right now we have almost 500 students, and the place is doing amazing. But it took a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of hard work. As myself, I also was blessed with, I was awarded in 2017. 2015, I was the Southern California Entrepreneur of the Year, which was super cool, that I was given that amazing award. I've also received a couple business, like Women in Business awards and things like that. So I've been able to really, I think, turn these circumstances that were given to me that were not awesome around, and I did it all by hard work and just believing in myself and my dreams. So I think it's really important that you guys take risks in your life, and you don't let people tell you who you are. You know who you are. At the end of the day, it's your life, and you have to follow your dreams and your goals. And if you truly believe you were meant to do something, you probably were. Where there's a will, there is absolutely a way. And now that this is very full circle for me, and I often find myself standing in a classroom of students looking at me, all different ages, and I find myself giving them lots of pep talks and lots of motivational talks, trying to explain to them, look, you get what you work for. You can't give up. Give your best. Have fun. And it's so rewarding on the other end when I now see the next generation of dancers feeling inspired and out there and going for their dreams, and to feel that I made even the smallest impact in that for them is everything for me. And so I do promise you guys to follow your heart, and your circumstances sometimes will take you somewhere that you never even thought was possible. My teacher in high school gave me a quote once, and she said, "Your heart lifted your feet and you danced." And I said, yes, and that's at the bottom of like every one of my emails, because it still resonates so strong to me. And yeah, so please, everybody in here, go for your dreams. Don't let things stand in your way. I know it sounds cliche, but there really is always a way. Thank you for your time, and thank you for having me.